So it's lovely to be here. It's a real honour to be speaking amongst such incredible speakers on such amazing topics. And as Leslie said in the opening address, social media is incredibly important for libraries. Unfortunately, it's also incredibly complicated, and I feel like it's become more complicated recently than it ever has been before. I think in the 2000s, up until maybe 2010, it was relatively straightforward. There was Facebook, and then there was Facebook and Twitter, and we could do that well, and that was sort of enough. And then Instagram came along and complicated things a little bit, and then TikTok came along, and some people had huge success with that, and then it sort of got banned, and then it got unbanned again, and that was complicated. And then Twitter, which was always the kind of consistent one that we could rely upon, became the place where hope went to die, and that makes things complicated again. So we're having to manage, how do we communicate with our audiences? How do we bring communities together? How do we do all this stuff in a landscape that's constantly changing when we have a lot of other demands on our time, and social media is only one part of what we do. So there are myriad challenges here. And so obviously one of the big issues is that the landscape is more fractured than it ever has been before. Obviously social media sits under the sort of wider library marketing umbrella, and there are various issues which really across all sectors are something of a problem in library marketing terms. So there's the fact that often, not always, but often we spend 99% of our time assembling collections, making services, but we just spend a very small amount of our time telling people about not just the fact they exist, but how they're relevant to their lives. There is a lot of our marketing, whether we consciously think about this or not, focuses on three groups. And I've said on the slide there that they are low-value groups in purely marketing terms. I can't stress enough how I'm not saying they're low-value groups per se. But in marketing terms, those groups of basically the absolute superfans, the people who are constantly using the library, who are constantly talking about it all the time to their friends, the people who love us already. It's a very nice thing to market to those people because they give us instant good feedback about the marketing. But the fact is, we're not nudging the dial on anything by doing that because they're already using the library, so everything stays the same. At the opposite end of the scale, you have the people who are actively hostile towards libraries, and you could spend months trying to market to them and make very little impact on trying to get through to them. And then there is the third category, which is other people in our industry, the other librarians. And often you'll see social media posts from a library that have done quite well, and then you look at all the comments, and they're just from the rest of us. They're just us telling each other how funny we think each other are. And that's, again, it's nice, but we do have to think about the fact we are here to try and make a difference to behaviour. We're trying to have impact here with our social media. So when we get outside of those three groups, we start to see more real-world results happening as a result of what we're doing online. And then there's also the fact that a lot of library marketing just lacks a bit of focus. We tend to try and do too much all at once. And also it lacks a bit of ambition at times, because our ambition has to be right up here. We have to have sky-high ambition because we are trying to change behaviour. That's what we're there to do. We're not just there to make people think nice things about the library or to have good engagement stats on our social media. We want people to do something that they weren't going to do before. And that might be something as straightforward as coming into the building. It might be bringing their kid to a story time. It might be signing up for an online class. It might just be reading an ebook. There's a million things you can think of for this. But we want them to do something they weren't going to do before, so we are trying to change behaviour. And sometimes, when you look at some library social media, you can say, yeah, this is quite nice, actually, I quite like it, it's got a nice tone. But is anyone doing anything different to what they were doing before? And if the answer is no, then we need to think about, well, how do we change that? Because we're trying to get stuff done here. So let's talk briefly about library marketing and the library brand a little bit. And I don't know about you, but I find that marketing definitions don't really work for us in our particular sector when you look at kind of general ones. So there's the classic Merriam-Webster process of technique, promoting, selling, distributing product or service. It doesn't quite work. As soon as you see the word selling there, you're instantly thinking that's not quite what we're up to. Philip Kotler's the sort of grandfather or godfather of marketing and writing about marketing. And it starts off well, the science and art of exploring, creating, delivering value to satisfy the needs of a target market. Yeah, love all that. At a profit. You've lost me at the end, Philip. It was so good up until the last bit, but we're not really trying to profit from people most of the time. I like this one, though. This is from Nancy Dowd in a bite-sized marketing book. Marketing goes beyond trying to get people to use the library. It's a concerted effort to articulate your value. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do really impactful stuff where people increase their understanding of what we really represent as libraries. So the definition that I've use myself because I can't find one that quite works for us. It's simply that we are trying to tell the right people at the right time in the right way about what we have that they need. That's what marketing is. So I think it's not so much of a problem now, but when I first started talking about this, there was definitely people who thought marketing was a bit of a dirty word in a library context. And so I had this definition partly just to reassure people that we're not doing anything nefarious, we're not trying to manipulate people, we're not being disingenuous, we're just trying to get the relevant things in front of the right people so they think, oh yeah, I get how this fits in with my life. I will come and avail myself of the library services, because that's how people's interior monologue sounds. I'll avail myself of the library services. So what's the difference between library brand and branding? And the reason I ask this question is because I sometimes see the words being used synonymously, and they are not the exact same thing, and I think it matters that they are not. And the reason for that is because essentially I would describe the brand as the sort of sum total of everybody's perception of your institution, the products and services. It's how people think about what we do. And that's different to the branding, which is the process of trying to influence those perceptions. So we can't just say, our brand is that we're exciting and the colour red, because that's not enough. You can't just decide what your brand is. You have to make that happen, because it's about other people's thoughts on what that is. And that's really, really important. So a simple shorthand, I think, a way of remembering this is your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Now, I'm not talking about us as librarians, by the way. I'm not talking about individual librarian brand. I don't think that's a fun topic. I'm talking about libraries per se. What are people saying about libraries? But in this context, what are people saying about our libraries, each of your libraries, when we are not there to hear it? Are they talking about them at all? Are they saying things positively? And what makes them more likely to have an opinion at all about what it is that we're doing? You can't control that. You can never control the brand. But it's worth trying to think about what you'd like it to be and then start marketing with that in mind to try and make it more likely to happen. Now, there's sophisticated kind of brand audits you can do to try and find out what your brand is, but quite honestly, the simplest thing to do is just to ask your users, what are 3 words that you would use to describe the library? If you can do that on a wide enough scale, you can do it online, you can do it in person, you will get a good idea of how people think about you and what your brand is, and then you can see if that matches up with how you perceive yourselves and how you would like to be perceived, and then you can start to adjust the marketing to focus on things that you think is missing from that list of words that you would like to be there. So, as libraries, we need to develop our marketing materials with our desired brand in mind. We have to think, what is it we want people to say about us when we're not in the room, and how can we make that more likely to happen in the way that we market ourselves? And of course, social media is a huge part of that, but so is all of the other ways in which we market ourselves. And the best marketing often happens when the channels are joined up. They're talking the same language at the same time. So the social media is not working in isolation from the newsletter or the screens, but everything's kind of working together. So what do you want your library to be known for? And there's no right answer to this, by the way. There's probably 70 or 80 different possible answers to this from 70 or 80 different libraries represented in the room. Do you want to be known as approachable or fun or authoritative or comprehensive or quick or transformative or contemporary or inclusive? These are all fantastic things to be known for, potentially, but it would be absolutely impossible to be known for all of those. I mean, some of them are almost working against each other because they're sort of at opposite ends of the spectrum. But it's just unrealistic. Even if you are all that stuff, it would be a big ask to find a user of your library and say, what do you think of the library? And for them to list that, because it's too much. So it's almost better to pick a few things, to pick a handful of words and phrases about how we want to be perceived, and then try and make that happen. And the marketing doesn't have to last forever. You could do 1 year's worth of marketing to aim at a specific thing. And then once you feel like you've got that sorted, you can move on to other things in subsequent years' worth of marketing. So think about what you would like to be known for. And as I mentioned, it's probably impossible to be known for all of them. So you want to build a sort of a pattern of associations where people think, oh yeah, I associate, for example, Paisley Library with this, that, and that. And then that becomes something that you can build the marketing around. So I would very much like you to turn to the person next to you, or if you had a discussion about politics at lunch and have fallen out with them, turn to the person on the other side. And I want you to talk about the answer to this question. What do you want your library's brand to be? I'm going to give you a very strict 3 minutes for this, and then we're going to move on. So talk to each other. What do you want your library's brand to be? No right answers, no wrong answers, just go for it. Okay, everybody, I am very sorry to curtail creative conversations, but just to bring everybody back together, hopefully you came up with some words and phrases that you would like to be associated with. Can I have one person who is comfortable to just call out the words or phrases they came up with, and I'll repeat them into the mic so everybody can hear. I'm not going to ask anybody else. If you're the first person, you'll be the person. Is anyone happy to call out what they came up with? Connecting communities. Through powerful partnerships. Okay, that's nice. That works not just as a brand, but as a tagline, which works well. So connecting communities is exactly the kind of thing where it's fantastic to be known as that, but it will not happen on its own because people don't go around saying, have you heard about such and such? They connect communities. So we have to make that happen. Even if we are connecting communities, we have to make that happen as a brand by focusing the marketing on that. So if we're making powerful partnerships, we need to exemplify that in the way that we're promoting stuff. We need to be doing some social media campaigns that draw attention to the partnerships that already exist to encourage others to happen. It's the kind of thing where we need to put the work in to make that happen so it becomes the brand. And it's, especially when we talk about things like being inclusive or a safe space, we can think of the library as a safe space, but to be known as a safe space by the communities who need it to be safe, that's not going to happen automatically. We have to make that happen, and the marketing can help. Obviously, the work comes from making it safe, but the marketing also has to persuade people who might not otherwise be on board with that idea that it's a safe space. So thank you for thinking about that. So what I like to do really is I like to keep that ideal in mind as I make marketing materials to try and essentially bring that to reality. So step one is working out what you want the library brand to be, and then step two is making the marketing help that happen, and obviously social media is really, really important for that. So let's look at some specific social media stuff now that we've kind of zoomed out. Let's zoom in on the detail. It's really, really vital, but we just cannot do everything all the time. We do not have enough staff, we do not have enough money to be across all of the platforms and constantly doing social media. It's unrealistic for most of us to aim at that. So I want to talk about in 2025, in this fractured landscape, what should we be prioritizing? What should we be putting our mind to? So this is a graph. I was hoping for 2025 figures because it's March, but I can't find any. So this is late 2024 figures of the most popular social media platforms worldwide, in millions this is. So Twitter's got an asterisk by it because it's impossible to get accurate information because it's run by people who lie for a living. But there is, as you can see, some huge numbers there. TikTok 1.5 billion, Instagram 2 billion, YouTube 2.5 billion. And there at the top, the still very unfashionable and all the stories about how everybody's leaving it, Facebook, which is still the giant with over 3 billion users, which is just a terrifyingly, extraordinarily big amount. So regardless of our own feelings about Facebook and regardless of the narrative in general about Facebook, I think it's impossible to avoid the conclusion that Facebook remains an essential platform for most public libraries. And, you know, I work across all the different sectors, and it's not the most essential platform for the other sectors, but I think in public libraries there is a lot of great work you can do connecting communities, bringing people together, doing the kind of hyper-local stuff using Facebook. So I think it's important to learn from your own results and your own experiences with it rather than any kind of overarching narrative that you hear about Facebook in libraries per se. If it's working for you, it's working. We should continue to invest time into it. I think the second thing is that Instagram is perhaps the opportunity to get the most change to happen in a short space of time, because there are a lot of people there. It's millennials' favorite platform. So if there's a certain demographic that you're going after, Instagram is a good place to go. It's got a lot of use in the cultural sector. There's loads of examples to follow. If you're, relatively new to using it as a library service, or you're sort of, finding your way still, there's lots of other libraries you can look at to see what sort of things work. And people are used to following organizations there. So it won't be a weird thing for a library to be there. And also there's some myths about it. One of them is you can't use it on a desktop, you can. Another is that you have to be like a great photographer to use it, and you don't. There's some nice tools built in to kind of edit photos. Even if there wasn't, that doesn't matter, because what Instagram audiences care about is the subject of the picture or the video, not the standard of the photography or the equipment that you've got. So I promise you, if you have a phone, you have a good enough camera, and it's just about taking pictures of arresting things. It's really a Your Ideas Here platform. I would say that the best Instagram comes from just having your phone with you and capturing stuff as it happens in the library, rather than sort of sitting down and thinking, I'm going to do an Instagram post now, and then racking your brains for what to do. You don't have to constantly post stuff on it all the time. It's about just capturing the stuff when it happens, and then when you've got a moment, saying, right, how can we make this into an impactful message on that particular platform? It's the most complicated platform because it's got 3 different content types. So the stories are the thing that I found hardest to get my head around when I was, first starting to use it as my library. These are portraits, so obviously it's all designed to suit the phone, and they can be videos, they can be text, but they disappear after 24 hours, and they don't need to be beautiful, they don't need to look good, they can just be basic text. They're sort of like a tweet in a way. It's just a way of getting functional information out to people. Anything time sensitive, put it in a story because it's more likely to be seen in the time frame that you need. And then you've got Reels, which is the Instagram's attempt to take on TikTok, portrait-style videos, great for content within the library, great for kind of capturing story times if you can do it in a way where none of the kids are identifiable or whatever, and just really nice for showcasing what the library's like. There is a huge value to letting people actually see what a space is like in use before they come through the doors, because they feel comfortable with it when they've seen it. So just showing, you don't need to make some kind of super cool hipster viral content. You just need to show people what they're going to get if they come through your doors. And then there is what are known as the grid, the kind of the main pictures on your account. Good for spaces. Interior shots of libraries go down really well. Pretty much every picture in the Paisley presentation would make a good Instagram post because they're all such nice pictures of the spaces. Good for behind the scenes stuff. You know the cliche about how nobody cares how the sausage is made? I don't think that's true anymore. I think they do care how the sausage is made. I think that changed during lockdown. So you can tell people how you do stuff and they will actually be interested in that. But the key thing about the grid is I often see libraries putting pictures of words on their grid. They will have an infographic or a post that's just, Happy World Book Day or whatever. It just doesn't work. If you compare your stats with a post that's a picture of a thing or a post that's a picture of words, you will see that no one is seeing the words pictures. It doesn't matter what the sentiment is or how beautifully crafted it is, it will not get the reach. And the way Instagram works is people have to do something for the image or the video to spread. They have to press the like button, or they have to send it on to their friends, or they have to DM someone about it. So if no one's doing that stuff, it just sort of stays in the room and it doesn't spread further. So we have to kind of do the stuff that works on that particular platform for it to be successful. So Instagram, I think, is a great opportunity for libraries. And then we get to Twitter. And it used to be so good, didn't it? Twitter was so great. It was really nice for us, lovely for actually talking to library users and engaging with people and having conversations. Lots of use amongst our sector and our industry. And then it became X, and loads of people left, and the people joining now are, awful. Let's not put too fine a point on it. The mechanics don't work as well. All the bolt-on tools that allowed you to look at analytics and stuff are no longer available. The whole thing's basically unusable unless you pay. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, which is that it's really completely at odds with all of our values to be on a platform run by the person it's run by. And I think it's so toxic, it's potentially now reputationally damaging to be there as a library. That's my opinion. I'm very, very happy for other people to take different opinions. I'm not hard-line about this, but that's my view on it. And, there's a huge amount of kind of Nazi activity on there. There's the fact that he's so bad at running it, it might go out of business anyway because its value's falling. There's the fact that he might charge people to pay to use tweets. There's all the stuff around trying to incite riots in the UK. There is the fact that so many organisations have left there. I feel like even if we're still on there as a library, we need a plan for how we're going to get out, even if it's not now. And I would say that you don't have to just go, bang, we're off. You can say, right, it's March now. By the end of May, we're going to have left X, for example. Just have a plan, because for all sorts of reasons, you might not be able to be there in the long term. So we need to think about what else we do instead. trust me, as someone who got their library off Twitter, it feels great. It's like having a warm bath after being grubby for a day and covered in mud or something. Do you know what I mean? It's so nice to be out of that horrendous environment. And no one's complained. In fact, we got a lot of plaudits for it. No one's gone, oh, I wish you were still on Twitter. And we've done other stuff to kind of scaffold information finding so that those people who did get information from us that way can find it other ways. But it's lovely to be gone. No regrets. So the thing about it is, even if you ignore all of that ethical, moral type stuff and you don't mind that, that's absolutely fine. Here we've got an example from what I think is an excellent Twitter account, Edinburgh Libraries. And here is a tweet from Edinburgh Libraries. And if you look at the stats, it's been seen by 110 people and they've got 14,000 followers. The problem is not the tweet. It is a good tweet, right? The tweet is, friendly. It's got a good offer in it. It's got a nice graphic. Graphics do work in this context that tells you more than the tweet could tell it on its own. It's literally a good example of how to use Twitter. But it's reached 0.7% of the followers because it's broken. The platform's broken. And because it's got a link in it, it's being completely suppressed by the algorithm because Twitter wants links not to work unless they're to things like Fox News or whatever. So it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's broken. This is a good library account with loads of followers and it's still not working for them. So what hope have the rest of us got? So I think it no longer works. It is time to become XX, and that is my final word on the subject. Potential alternatives. There's various things that people are going to instead, right? You've probably heard of several of them. There is a fragmented landscape, and I don't think it'll be ever that straightforward again. I think we have to kind of reckon with the fact that it's a bit more diffuse than it ever has been before. So there is Mastodon. Mastodon, I would say, as a library, you can just ignore it. There are librarians on there, particularly the more kind of techie side of librarianship have found a nice home there, but there are not loads of examples of libraries making a success of it. I'm a huge believer in having as fewer things on your plate as you can when you're doing social media, so just don't worry about it, forget that. Blue Sky is really interesting. It is growing all the time. At one point, they were adding 1 million users a day. It's a very different experience from Twitter. If you've not been on it, it's much nicer, essentially. I would really recommend Blue Sky as an individual librarian. If you wondered about taking the plunge, it's sort of recreating those fantastic networks that we all had on Twitter back in the day. For public libraries, it's a qualified recommendation. I'll come back to that in a minute. Threads has got public library potential. There's a lot of book discussion on Threads. Threads is a weird thing to get a handle on because you can't really get a good idea of how many people are using it because anyone with an Instagram account sort of also has a Threads account, so the numbers are inflated. It went through a very popular phase, then it went really right down, and then it went back up again when it became legal in the EU. If you're happy to just talk about the book aspect of your content, I think Threads might be a productive place for public libraries to go. And I do think it's worth not doing the same thing across all platforms. So I would have a Thread strategy which was literally focused on books, and I would not talk about the other stuff that we do there. I would talk about it elsewhere. And then there is TikTok. TikTok is hugely time-consuming. It feels like you're reading a language that's been written entirely by young people, which is terrifying. And it's just, it's all content. You can't just write words. It's content. It's video making. But the way that TikTok works is followers are almost unimportant. Like, it will show your video to the people that it thinks will like your video. And it doesn't matter whether you've got 1,000 followers, 20 followers, or 10,000 followers. It doesn't really affect anything because it just puts the video out to people who think they're going to like it. So to reach new users who could become potential library users if they only knew what you had, TikTok is pretty powerful, and there's some very successful public libraries on there which you can have a look at. So yeah, just Threads. It's not become a Twitter replacement yet, but it could be really useful in time. And then Blue Sky. It's a nice place to be. It's got very mid 2010s Twitter vibes to it. And if you are interested in Blue Sky, my account has some starter packs on it. So if you just find me and navigate to starter packs, then you will see that there's an academic libraries, a public libraries, and a health library starter packs. If you're not familiar with starter packs, Blue Sky's way of giving you a whole curated set of users in one go that you can just follow and get a sense of what they're doing. So if you go to the public libraries starter pack, you'll find Shetland who are here, you'll find National Library of Scotland, Glasgow Women's Library, and also not Scottish libraries as well. I think there's about 30 on there, and you can basically sort of dip your toe in and see how they're doing, what sort of thing they're up to, and then you can make an informed decision as to whether you want to investigate it for your library service as well. So I would recommend having a look at that. And as I say, it is a nice place to be. engagement levels are higher on Blue Sky than they were on Twitter, even in its heyday. So for my library, which I appreciate is an academic library, so slightly different experience for me, but we've reached 8,000 followers within about 2 months, and it took us like 12 years to get to 7,500 followers on Twitter. Everyone's like up for it there. Everyone's engaged. It's a nice place to be. So I would recommend having a look. So go to the public library, start back. And then you've got TikTok, and it's the new thing, and there's lots of stuff that's quite off-putting about it, lots of lip-syncing to quotes and songs, lots of viral dancing and stuff. And there's BookTok, which has had a profound effect on book sales. If you get mentioned on BookTok, your sales go through the roof. The thing that makes it relevant, I think, is that it is a search engine. There is a whole generation of people who are not using words to search. They are just scroll searching to find videos that tell them what they need to know. So the reason I've got my library onto TikTok, which I use very sporadically, as and when I have the time to do it, is because I know there are sets of users that will never be reading the website. So the only way they'll get the information is if they find it in video form. So I think it's worth it for that. And in fact, 40% of Gen Z apparently just use TikTok and Instagram to find information. So if we want them to find stuff about us, beautifully rendered stuff on the website isn't going to cut it. So it's worth thinking about TikTok, but it's a big time commitment, and it sort of needs someone who's sort of a little bit in the TikTok world already. So if you have a member of staff who uses TikTok for themselves, I would start there and say to them, what do you think we could do as a library, rather than having to learn the entire language from scratch yourself, because it is a big old time-consuming thing. You don't need to be brilliant at it. This is the thing. Every example you ever see of TikTok is an incredibly intricate, well-done, super complicated, viral thing. And we don't have to use it like that. Sometimes we can just do a perfectly normal piece of information sharing that helps get the message out about what we're doing. So one of the exhibitors that we have here is showcasing podcasting equipment. And we have a podcasting studio at my library. And one of the best ways we got people to know about it was just to make a simple video on TikTok. And there's no dancing, there's no singing, there's a boring voiceover from me and just shots of the studio. But it reached 7,000 people. And that means loads of people know about it now that didn't know about it before. So it's worth considering, I would say. So those are my kind of very broad strokes social media takeaways, that Facebook does remain essential. Instagram is perhaps the biggest opportunity to have a real boom in terms of finding people and bringing them into the space that aren't already there. I would highly recommend the life cleanse of getting off X, and that there are potentially opportunities for TikTok or Blue Sky or Threads. What I wouldn't take from that is we need to do all of those. I cannot stress enough how I would recommend doing fewer things well than spreading yourself too thin and feeling like you have to be everything and do everything, because it's just not feasible. So think of those potential options, which is the one that's most pertinent to my library's strategy and my library's needs. Maybe it is Blue Sky, in which case just do Blue Sky. Don't worry about TikTok and Threads for now. You can always come back to them later, but don't feel like you have to be everywhere. Final tips then, before I finish. I think consistency is overrated. I get why we feel like we have to be consistent, because we are used to consistency being a good thing. Consistency of service, consistency of opening hours, consistency of friendliness from staff. I don't think we have to be consistent in tone when we're on social media, because I think it's okay to have different voices. So let's say that I'm on social media duty on the Monday, Mark is on the Tuesday, Jen's on the Wednesday, Rachel's on the Thursday. If we have different voices and different takes, that's good, because there's a bit of diversity there. It's not just the same people saying the same things. Because I think what tends to happen is we end up with no personality because we don't want to have more than one personality, because we smooth off all the rough edges of each person's voice so that it sounds the same, and then it just becomes corporate and generic, and then nobody cares. Because we are there to build relationships. I know that sounds a bit kind of pretentious, but we are. We're there to build relationships, and we're more likely to do that if we are putting the human element into our conversation. So if Jen's got a completely different way of expressing a service of the library than I have, I think that's a strength, not a weakness. So we don't need to try and be consistent in our tone. We do have to be consistently helpful, I think, but we certainly don't have to sound like each other. We could just let people put their own spin on things, because personality matters a lot in social media, and it's what helps make connections, and then connections are what help build relationships, and relationships help change behaviour and get people to do things that they weren't doing before. Be creative is the most hack phrase ever. It's so easy to say, and it's so hard to do. But let me say what I actually mean by that is if you personally have an interesting take or framing that's a little bit more creative about a service of the library, but you're not sure if it's the right thing for the social media account. And I'm not talking about anything that's super risque or I don't want anyone to get into trouble. I'm just talking about like your sense of humour or your way of seeing the world means that there's a bit of a different framing for this thing that I'm going to talk about on social media. Just try it. Try the creative route and see how your community responds to it. See if they come back and say, oh, I like this a bit more. If they just press the like button a few more times, or if you see a reply saying, have you seen this? So for example, we have a family study room at my library. And it is for students to study alongside their kids. And I made a video of a really, really hardcore drum and bass remix of The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round, which I found. And I just made the video of me going around the family study room, and every time the bass was particularly loud, I made the video vibrate. It's super niche, and it could easily have completely fallen. The whole audience might have gone, who is this clearly 44-year-old idiot making a video about stuff he doesn't understand. But it didn't. It went really well. It got sent on over 100 times by people to their peers. And the key thing is, interest and inquiries about using the family study room went up because it got people talking. Now, if that hadn't worked, that would have been okay too, because it's just one thing. It gets buried by other content straight away. It's just like slightly embarrassing that you tried something that didn't work. It's not a problem, because you'll do something else next time. So just try the creative option and see how it goes, and your community will tell you if they want more of that. And then you can just do more of the stuff that works and less of the stuff that doesn't. Ultimately, above all, don't blend in. It's so easy to just blend in. Like, it's so easy just to become part of the wallpaper of 2025 white noise life. Think about how your library can stand out. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, this library is so incredibly different. It's the best of all the libraries. We're not competing with each other. We just need to be like, this library is doing something I wasn't expecting a library to do, or this is just not blending in with the background, but it's grabbing my attention in some way. And the thing is, you don't have to do that in the same way as everybody else is doing it. You know, there are libraries that do it with sort of sass. There are libraries that do it with whimsy. There are libraries that do it by making people feel warm inside. There are libraries that make people laugh. You can just pick the lane that best suits you, but just don't become part of the... Wow, that's a loud timer for my end of that thing. I should have thought about that. Don't become part of the background. Now, I was going to say, has anyone got questions or ideas? But I'm not going to say that because of the whole cafe thing that's coming up. So imagine we just had some really great questions, right, and really good answers. And everyone's like, oh, that was such a great Q&A. And then I'm going to go on to like 2 more slides to finish off, okay? So just to remind you, our ambition has to be sky high. When we're doing social media, it's very easy to get in the pattern of just doing it reactively or just sort of doing it because, you know, we've got some time to do it, so let's get something out there, and not thinking about how does it relate to what we're trying to achieve, and is this actually going to change anyone's views on anything or their behaviour? Is it going to make an actual impact to the library? Not just an impact in the silo of social media. Is it going to make a tangible impact to the library itself or the library system that we are a part of? And my final tip is related to that, which is basically start from your destination. So think about what is strategically important for your library. Start there and then work your way back to what the social media should do to support that, rather than starting from what should we do for social media and then working stuff out from there, because then you just end up sitting around going, I know I should be posting today, but I can't think of anything to do. So start from your destination. Start thinking about what you would like your perception to be amongst the audiences that you are targeting, and then make that happen via the social media, joining it up with all the other stuff that you do as part of your marketing. Oh yeah, I forgot I had an animation of a... That's where we are, by the way, if anyone's wondering. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. It's genuinely so nice to come here and do this, and I really appreciate all of you listening to that. And if you've got any questions, we'll get to them in a second, but I'll hand over to my also Yorkshire-based colleagues for now. And cheers very much for your attention.